FedNow, CBDCs. We're going to break down all of that and what it might mean for crypto, including Bitcoin, in today's video. I think you guys are going to like this one. It gets into a lot of detail around where FedNow stands and its rails and what that might mean. So we'll break it all down for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor today. That is iTrust Capital. If you are looking to do long-term holding of a crypto asset and you want to do it via a crypto IRA, this is one of the places to check out. You can, of course, do a lot of different types of investing, including not only just crypto, but also gold and silver, along with a ton of altcoins. So there's a lot of variety over there. Make sure and use our link down below. You'll be able to get a $100 funding reward just by using that link, and it does help the channel out. So check it out. All right, let's get into a couple of things here today, and I want to go and first start with some recent news. You guys have heard us talk about this quite a bit over the past few weeks. Is FedNow. This is launching now in July. This will be instant payments with the FedNow service, and a lot of people are asking, well, hey, is this CBDC? No, this is a payment system. It's a payment rail. Think of this as Venmo, Cash App, those kinds of tool sets that you've used, maybe even to a certain extent PayPal. And this is essentially instant payments via the Fed system that would be tied to potential banks and create a Lightning style network of payments. So it's going to be an interesting aspect to it. The real question is how does this start to roll into a potential use of maybe a CBDC or what that might look like? There's a lot happening here. Let me kind of showcase a couple of things. This is their video on it. I'll just play this for you guys.
In today's fast-paced world, time is money. More people, businesses, and organizations are demanding instant payments. That's why the Federal Reserve is developing the FedNow service, a safe and efficient instant payments infrastructure that will modernize the U.S. payment system. The FedNow service will give financial institutions the opportunity to innovate, enabling their customers to send and receive money in seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Funds will settle between financial institutions in real time, which means there's no buildup of interbank obligations, and end users will have access to the funds in seconds.
All right, so as you guys see there, this is really more of a payment system. The unique thing about this that really changes things, I think, is you guys know whether you use Venmo or Zelle or other aspects around these instant payment systems that aren't so instant. This essentially replaces all of those. Now, the question will be is whether or not the banking system can keep up with that. Because remember, the banking system has been working on 1-2 day lags. Even though things have been speeding up over the past few years, there is still a certain amount of lag time between certain aspects. This is going to change all of that, including getting assets and payment into your own bank accounts through some sort of FedNow. So there is going to be a huge benefit of this. And the argument here is that essentially this replaces the need for crypto, because crypto, of course, we understand, instantaneous almost. And the option here, of course, is certified. They're using the ISO 222 component, which is really just a certification of authenticity. So there's going to be less fraud, those kind of things that can play out. Obviously, we've already started to see a lot of these kind of things around Zelle, which is one of the big breakpoints of what these cross-borderless and more instantaneous payment systems have faced. Now, whether or not this is going to be successful, still question mark, because it is the government rolling this out. So the technology might be still a bit questionable overall. Just as an example, though, there's a couple of things here. It could outcompete almost every crypto project that's out there. I'm going to zoom in on a couple of things. Almost completely obviates the need for a U.S. central bank digital currency. I'll explain this. That's a big statement that I don't necessarily think is completely true, but their position is sound here. It will serve everybody. Its functions are limited to customers in good standing with U.S. qualified financial institutions. That mainly means the black market's not going to be getting this, and probably all the bad guys. Okay. However, it's also going to still connect with the majority of U.S. residents as well as wealthy USD users abroad. So people in other countries be able to use the FedNow system. Good for just payments and speed of payments. FedNow also promises lower costs almost than any blockchain in existence. $25 is a monthly access fee, and then payments up to 100 grand. It's going to charge 4.5 cents per transaction, plus a cent on the other side for requests paid by the requester. So pretty cheap. In fact, very cheap. A lot of these kinds of service fees this pretty much kills PayPal, because those kind of instantaneous service fees that PayPal charges for is gone. Now, can it deal with the unbanked, all that kind of thing? I'll talk to you guys about that in a minute. Further into this, there was one other thing here, fraud screening, tools to include a maximum limit on transactions. This is going to keep basically the drug dealers from being able to move millions. The ability to flag accounts involved in suspicious activity. That's going to be a question mark because of privacy, and reporting the tools including. So could this get into a problem into where your payment system, remember, whoever controls the gateway is who controls society. Even in this particular case, if you can't move your money, then this is a problem. That's why the opportunity here of a big media campaign to say, hey, this is even better than crypto is. If we can shut down the alternative, then we begin to create the only gateway into the economy, and that is through these kinds of payment systems. So it's a pretty interesting aspect. I think there's going to be a lot of analysis to this in the future. Some things to keep track of right now is obviously China is watching transactions as its CBDC rollout gains traction. They've continued to be a big proponent. We've already seen quite a bit of movement with the digital yuan, and also the global macro aspect of how they're connecting with other countries, including Russia, the Saudis, Pakistan, Iran, etc. A lot of countries that may not necessarily fall on the good list in terms of the United States. So this may be interesting to see how this plays out, from a global reserve pressure. You also have, don't forget, the issue this past week with OPEC putting more pressure on oil production. Again, this is more pressure on the US dollar. We'll get into that in another show, but I want to get into a couple of things here. This was over on Pompliano's podcast. This is the CEO of Fireblocks. And remember, Fireblocks Self-Custody, they're designed to help self-custody occur through all these different organizations. One thing he makes a statement in around CBDC, I thought this was interesting. Listen to what he had to say on this.
It looks a bit like what we are familiar with USDC and with the stablecoins, that you can actually have the currency in your wallet, right? So it basically propagates to the end consumer. And there is a debate, it's actually like, a very philosophical debate on whether Western countries like the United States and Europe, which model is the right model, because you are exposed to privacy and other questions that probably people didn't care that much when they are interacting in a country like China with this. And then if it's actually just basically stops at the bank level, then the banks can use a natively issued stablecoin like USDC or Paxos or and so on to basically propagate that mechanism to the end customer.
So the idea here is that if we get to some sort of control of whether it's a digital dollar, a CBDC, what his argument is that there is looking outside the United States as the potential for even a self-custody component versus what you see right now in the fractional reserve system, which is when you put money in a bank, that money's not really there. It's being fractionally loaned out, and it's an IOU essentially back to you. It looks like you have money in the bank, but in the reality, if the banking system ever went down, we already saw this with SVB, the money's just not there. So that is the factor of true custodial level banking or non-fractional reserve, which is what we looked at with Custodia Bank and why they were declined from the Fed. This, I think, again, will start to narrow the number of banks involved in this that have access to these payment rails, including what FedNow is. So the real question will be, is and can these banks work outside the system for payment systems that are beyond the Fed system, much like this is kind of going to be looked at as almost like a SWIFT light? That'll be the question mark that I think we're going to start seeing in the coming months and years. Remember that this is the original white paper right here, Bitcoin, peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So the idea of peer-to-peer was still based on what the element of Bitcoin was originally designed for. The function, of course, outside of what is now more of a store of value, the idea is that you can move at lightning speed, hence Lightning Network. But the whole point is there's an opportunity here, I think, maybe for Bitcoin to possibly compete within this. This is very possible that could happen outside the borders of the United States, especially as we see a lot of these countries starting to put a lot of pressure on the US dollar as an alternative reserve. We could see a lot of things start to play into this. So when you think about what happened with the coronavirus, This caused a surge in demand for contactless payments. My whole theory is maybe this was a perfect example of moving to the digital asset environment, the digital currency environment, and getting the world and its societies ready for what we're seeing already, and that is the digitization of the monetary system. What used to be a paper cash and coin system across the globe has started to slowly move into it. Now the question will be is how do they start to change things within everything from the Constitution to many others around state laws, especially here in the United States because of the way the Republic is set up. There's going to be a lot of interesting aspects to this. This is a problem, though, that is existing right now, and that's the shortage of cash and coins. And if you look at right now, they have this whole task force called Get Coin Moving. And this is a problem because right now, this is all of the banks now kind of banding together. And the problem is this right here, is that more and more people are not getting coins or cannot get access to coins because they're kind of being hoarded in, ironically, piggy banks and things of that nature. But look at what they say here about this production issue.
Again, like last summer, this is not a coin supply problem, it's a circulation problem. Cash transactions have decreased significantly since 2019 as more and more folks have turned to performing their transactions electronically. That historically, the Mint has produced less than 20% of coins in circulation annually. This year, thanks to the tireless work of our manufacturing team, we are contributing 30% of coins introduced into the coin supply chain. From January 2020 to today, we have minted more than 21 billion coins, near record production levels. However, we cannot manufacture our way out of this problem.
All right, so as you can see there, issue is all this stuff is going away, guys. We're probably going to be dealing with this right now on the coin side of things. The likelihood of affecting a lot of cash businesses, this is real. There are a lot of cash businesses in the United States that operate on coins. And the ability for also how the taxation system works because of how change might work, all of that starts to play into massive retailers out there, especially in the environment of the unbanked. And I'll show you some data on the unbanked. What does all this mean when you look at how all this starts to move around? Well, the key here is going to be looking at where is the unbanked, how does that affect the economy overall, and then what are some other alternatives out there that this particular part of society, if you look at this breakdown right here, let me kind of zoom in on that just a little bit. This is the breakdown of unbanked rates by state. This is 2021, and you can kind of see here, right there. And notice here that we're climbing previously banked 2017, 46. Now we've got 2019, 50, and then 2021 starting to decline again. Back to the whole point of the problem or the issue that happened during COVID, which is where we started to see a lot of digital use. Remember, when you pull people out of physical contact, the need for cash does no longer exist, and that was the idea. Maybe not the idea, but the impact and one of the side effects has been this digitization of the monetization system, and the monetary system. So all of this plays into what could be a shift in how you and I use payment. FedNow is just the beginning. How we'll connect to whether it's a CBDC or potentially some sort of a stablecoin in the future is still the question. I think that is the next play. You think about where all this could have become really maybe fostered was all the way back into 2019. We're talking about almost 4 years now. And where this may go in the next 4 years, I think is going to be accelerated even further. Let me show you guys some data here on just in general of what's happening worldwide. Here's ANZ, who is killing cash withdrawals in some branches. This is in Australia. So this is like a top 4 bank in Australia that basically have said, all right, no more cash withdrawals. So they're essentially getting the population to move to this digital currency and digital opportunity here of what this might play into. A lot of pushback from the Aussies, and I think rightly so, because here in the United States, part of the whole legal tender battle will be the proprietary nature of how it works within these states and how that plays into how companies and even laws are affecting companies that either don't accept cash. You're going to have to change some laws on the books, including places like New York, here in Florida, etc. All of that plays into this. Now, Whether or not this can control and look at how you and I use money, it really boils down to how a central bank digital currency might work. And I still think we're still early enough, even though I think the doomsdayers and the conspiracy theorists might believe that this is actually happening now. If you look at this statement right here, central bank digital currencies, limit where and when you can spend your money, monitor and record every transaction, take fines, taxes, charges automatically from your account, give your money an expiry date, making savings impossible, link your wallet to a carbon allowance, social credit score, freezing your account when you say you're unable to buy anything. So it literally could be getting into full programmable money. If we get into programmable money, we got a problem. Not only a problem here in the United States, but worldwide. And that's the question mark is there a concerted effort to move all of this into or away from what's happening in blockchain? And I think that's the bigger scenario that plays into the future. If you look at what's happening in the UK, this is a UK cryptocurrency business is now struggling to access banking services. A couple of points that they hit on right here that I thought was interesting. There's a few banks that still seem to offer services right now. But the challenges are right now, this is Sunak, who is the mayor of London. The big problem is trying to foster this kind of approach toward fintech innovation, which I still question as whether or not that's a full-blown thing. The idea is that there's a lot of challenges here, and they're now starting to get pushback from the population, obviously society there, and even the constituents inside the UK. All of this, again, is just the beginning, guys. We're starting to see the precursors of where most of this is going. So the strength behind adoption is never been more important and greater, is because the more and the greater the adoption into a system and a cycle of monetary systems that exist outside of this kind of system that seems to be fighting with the potential of where all this is going on blockchain is real. And the reality is whether or not they can get the population of the world to agree with these kinds of things as we start to. Now, they're going to have to make it really easy. Of course, that's where the lazy aspect comes in. Most people just like to do things that are super easy versus what we see within the blockchain area. So let's get into a couple other things here. I just want to show right now, remember, U.S. White House economics report considers FedNow versus CBDC. Some things they stated right here is they're looking at right now FedNow to be mostly domestic, and it's not a digital asset which can be used to settle payments and transactions programmatically. So that's one of the key things that is missing. I think this again gets back into the point of where this might be growing in the future. All right, so let's take a look here at a clip. I want to play this one of Caitlin Long talking about where this may be going in the future. Listen to what she had to say.
You know, the same week that they shut down Signature was, again, big coincidence, was the same week that they announced that the FedNow payment system that they're developing is going to be ready to launch in July. So it looks like to me they're putting their hopes and dreams on an American CBDC.
Well, I'm not there yet. You know, there were some people who asked the question early on, is the reason why Custodia was the tip of the spear in the debanking crackdown because we had proposed a digital dollar, Abbott, that would be issued by a bank on Liquid, a sidechain of Bitcoin, and Ethereum as an ERC20 token. And there were some who also pointed out Custodia, because we own the patent on tokenization of a bank, of a digital dollar, of a U.S. bank accepting a U.S. dollar deposit and turning around and issuing a blockchain token for that deposit. In other words, stablecoins, but issued by a bank. We own the patent for that, and it was granted last July. There's an interesting question surrounding the Federal Reserve, which is it a private entity or is it a public entity? And the answer is it's both, and it kind of likes to play that ambiguity to its benefit depending upon the facts of whatever.
All right, so as you can see, there's a lot here that starts to roll into why the strategy is being implemented by the federal government to maybe go in this direction. Obviously, as you saw with Custodias, they have a patent component. Not that that necessarily would keep the government from being able to just seize a patent. I think that has been done before, I'm not sure. But that in itself, I don't know that it would block the potential of a bank being able to issue some sort of digital asset that would essentially be able to live in the blockchain, much like a USDC, Paxos, etc. This gets really complicated. What it boils down into is how does the government apply it, and does it affect Bitcoin or other digital assets in the future? Listen to what Senator Warren had to say about this.
It's based to the U.S.
That's right. And if they will verify the assets, if they want to be a stablecoin, for example, and verify their assets, now the whole world changes from my perspective. Yes. Now let's see what you can do. Let's
back
see
it
if
against
you
the
can
U.S.
produce.
dollar. Base it to the U.S. dollar.
And show that you've got the assets.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, I'm in. If you want to be
All right, so Warren apparently is in with USDC because that's exactly what USDC does. Likelihood is we're going to start to see other entities start to make its way into these dollar reserve or equal reserves. I think we're going to see gold play into this, treasury bills, other kinds of assets. There's some news out on T-bills right now of being tokenized. We'll talk about it a little bit later, maybe on our live shows. But the point is that they appear to understand a little bit about what's happening. I don't necessarily know what they think is going to happen because this would, I think, destabilize the U.S. dollar unless the U.S. dollar is in some way tied to it, which brings Circle into the mix a lot. Here's a further clip on what she had to say as well. Remember, she's been a little bit anti-crypto, but at the same time, she's talking out the other side of her mouth and actually promoting how this actually works. Listen to what she has to say here.
kind of protection to your customers.
And
How much, in fact, did JP Morgan collect in overdraft fees from their customers in 2020? Do you know the number?
I don't know the number in front of me, but
Well, I actually have the number in front of me.
Upon
It's
request,
$1.463 billion.
All right, so basically she's grilling Jamie Dimon there, and the idea behind this is that she's very anti-bank. All right, so if you're anti-bank, but you're pro maybe USDC or some sort of stable coin that is tied to US dollar, you have FedNow. The question is how is that USDC constructed? How can it be transacted globally? Does it have some greater strengths? Many people believe USDC is the new CBDC. That's the real question here that I think a lot of our lawmakers are now being framed with. Here's what I think. I think there is there's something underfoot here. We have got a scenario that's playing out on a regulatory environment that's much faster than what I thought would be transacting. This year, 2023, here we are, March of 2023 and April of 2023, and we're already starting to see these massive moves in digital payment systems with FedNow, the discussion of CBDCs and what the digital dollar might look like, stable coins, digital assets, really going after where and who is in control of these digital assets. You can see the shift is occurring. So this is a really big scenario. Now, just to show you guys the CBDC, this is the central bank digital currency status. All right, so you've got canceled, research, under research, proof of concept, pilot, and launched is blue. So this is back in November of 2015. Let's jump over here to 2016, still the same, a little bit more. Now you see Canada involved. Then you go to December of 2016, more of Europe researching where it's going. Let's go all the way into 2019 and look how much was done in 3 years, just into 2019 right here. 2019, this is where it gets really interesting. This is the number of countries that are, as you can see right there now, proof of concept, purple, right there. You've got Ukraine right here with Brazil. Obviously, Canada's already talked about it. Amazing that Canada was involved in that. But a lot of research in Europe going on. This is 2019. Then we move all the way up to say let's go to 2020. This is during COVID. People are starting to get the picture. Oh, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. We need digital. Now we've got pilots rolling out right here in China. That's, of course, the ECNY, which is the digital Yuan. Saudis coming in with their pilot. Then you got the Canadians. And a lot more research and a lot more proof of concept, including the Australian dollar coming into this. That's 2020. All right, look at this right now. This is the entire planet, guys. Here we are. Now let's roll up here into 2023. where we are today, April 2023, repaying it. Now you've got Russia in the mix. Pretty much every major country in the world is either at proof of concept stage, they've launched, or they're looking at pilots right now outside of, guess who's in the mix here, guys? One of what I think is the worst situations, and that's the United States. The United States, Australia, certain parts of South America, some parts of the EU, all right now in research. This is going to, by 2023 or 4 and 2025, I think this completely gets piloted out into all these situations. That's what we're dealing with, is a shift into all of this. Now, the real question is, with this and the tokenization of these assets, how will Bitcoin be used? Remember, ordinals are one of the biggest issues right here. As you can see, ordinals fees to date, again, continuing to skyrocket here. The potential here of utilizing ordinals within the Bitcoin aspect is real. And I think this is another feature that blockchain starts to represent, which is the tokenization. This is the aspect that starts to make it very difficult to penetrate from all of what we've seen in terms of digital dollars and those kind of things. Further into that, let's go over just an example of this right here. This is Zebedee, which is moving now money globally. Just got a whole lot easier. I want to play this video from them. And this is another example of projects that are really starting to accelerate how digital payments will be done. Look at what they have to do.
Your way. Anytime, anywhere. Zebedee is your global payments hub. Instant, borderless, easy. Really easy. Free your money. Get Zebedee now.
All right, so all that's in the apps, in the App Store. It's all utilizing in-game play. We're going to be looking at NFT projects, platforms, all that using. It's on the Lightning Network, so obviously tied to Bitcoin. This is a significant, I think we're going to continue. Remember, Strike, also what they did in El Salvador, the potential of what we'll see with Cash App and eventually Cash to some extent of what we might see in the future is still, I think, very, very up for grabs right now. And the big scenario that this plays out into is, how does this affect Bitcoin? Or how does this affect crypto in general? I don't know that it completely affects it. What I think it does is accelerates it. And the question mark is, what countries are going to embrace it as an alternative asset class? If it gets, just like gold, think of it as gold, but a digital gold. If it's accepted as an alternative asset class, then we have a very interesting painting of the field, because now what we're dealing with is all digitization out there. And that means blockchain, central bank digital currencies, what we will see with all these instant payment systems like FedNow and others, including the next generation of SWIFT with what Ripple is doing. All of this is playing out right now. You guys are living it. We are now seeing the end of maybe the world reserve currency and starting to see the beginning of something much more hybrid and much different out there. So we're going to continue to cover this. We'll do a full breakdown of this also in upcoming videos. So make sure and stick around. If you're not in our group already, make sure and jump into the Diamond Circle. It's the #1 way you get communication from us. And it's also the best way to get alpha and some additional stuff that we do there, including podcasts, my own personal audio notes, and even coverage of content that we don't cover here on the show. It's right there in the Diamond Circle. So click the link down below for that. If you want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.